Let's take a look at a project that uses an if-else structure. And I've created an application where the user is going to enter a number, they're going to click a button, and we're going to give them some feedback down here at the bottom as to whether the number they entered is even or odd. So my input box is simply called input_txt. My button is named even or odd _btn. And then this last text box at the bottom is named feedback_txt. Let's go into the actions. And I've already created the event listener for our even or odd _btn button. It's going to call a function called even or odd, and here is my function. So it's responding to a mouse event. It's not going to return anything, so the data type is void. And we're ready to create the code in the function to make it work. I'm going to start with a variable, and I'm going to call my variable my number. It's going to be an integer. And I'm going to take the integer value of input_txt. We're going to take the text property of that. Okay, I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to call this variable result. It's going to be a string. So I'm going to do my number dot toString. And I need a lowercase t on that. And we're going to add to that is odd. Then I'm going to create an if statement. And what I want to look at is my number, and I want to determine if it has if it's even or odd. And the best way to do that is to divide by 2 and see if there's a remainder. So we can use the modulus operator for that. If I do a my number modulus 2, and if that equals 0, then I know that my number is going to be even. And so I'll simply take our variable result, and notice it's in blue, so that's actually a keyword. Let's change that to my result. So my result equals, and I'm just going to copy this code up here. So it's going to be equal to my number.toString, and I'm going to say it is even. Now this will only execute, or this line here will only execute if this is a true statement. And then my output is going to be feedback_txt.text equals my result. So this may or may not get executed, and if it doesn't, it's going to say that my number is odd. If it does, it's going to say my number is even. Let's test. So right now I got the number 12 there. If I click even or odd, I'm told that 12 is even. If I change this to 17, I'm told that 17 is odd. And if we go 368, that's even. But 365 is odd. Now I could have done this a little bit differently. I could also use an if-else structure. So I'm going to go back into my actions, and I'm going to change this slightly. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this code. I'm going to cut it. So we'll just create our variable of my result, which is a string. And what I'm going to do here is simply add an else structure. So in the else fork, I'm going to type in my result. I'm going to paste in our equals my number.toString is odd concatenation, and let's test this. So right now the number 12, I click even or odd, and I'm told that 12 is even. If I change this to a 7, it's odd. 34 is even, but 43 is odd. So that works just fine as well. So two different ways of doing the same thing, one using just an if statement, one using an if-else structure. But even in the if structure, the first example, we kind of already gave it a value in that we set my result to something, and then we simply changed it if it was even. So it's kind of another way of providing two different possibilities. So I've got a little application where the user is entering a passcode number using a number pad, and click submit, and if it matches a predefined acceptable password, this door on the right hand side will open. Let me just go ahead and run this first so you can see this work. So if I type in a number here and I click submit, I'm told no admittance, that was not the right answer. But if I put in the correct password, the door opens and we see a bag of money inside our vault. So let's take a look at the code here to make that happen. So what I've got is all of these numbers are simply buttons, 1_BTN, 2_BTN, 3_BTN, and so forth. This is submit_BTN, and my little text box down here is named feedback_txt. Then over here on the right hand side is a movie clip named vault_MC. I'm going to double click on it to burrow down into that vault, and you can see what the vault looks like here in terms of the timeline. We're now looking at MC door. That was the name of my symbol name for this vault. And I've got a stop action here on frame 1. And so let me view these. So here on frame 1, all I see is the door. And I've got the door, it basically is just a rectangle underneath a mask. If, however, they get the right answer, I have the code go to and play frame 2, and it goes in the animation, it hits frame 25, in which case there's another stop action, and we see the door open now with the contents of the vault exposed. Okay, so that's all that is. Let's take a look at the code here for our submit button. Actually, before I get to that, I have a global variable called passcode, and here is the correct number that I have prescribed for getting into the vault, 850427. And I'm starting with another variable called pass entry, which is set to 0. Then I have functions for each of the 9 buttons 1 through 0. And they all basically work the same way. I have an event listener for each button that's going to call, in this case, the 1 button is going to call an add 1, the 2 button is going to call a function called add 2, 3 button calls a function add 3. Each one of those takes whatever the pass entry value is, multiplies it by 10, and adds whatever number I've clicked. So in this case, it's going to add a 1. On the 2 button, it's going to add a 2. On the 3 button, it's multiplying by 10 and adding a 3. So if the first number was 1 and then I pressed a 3, it would now be 13. And it goes on that way for all 9 of those buttons. The 0 just simply provides a 0. And within each one of those functions, I'm also displaying the pass entry value using .toString in our feedback text box. So as I click the numbers, I'm going to see the numbers at the bottom. Then our last button here is the submit button. It's going to call a function called submit entry. Here's my function. Returns nothing. And I have an if structure here, actually an if-else structure. And my condition, my Boolean condition is if pass entry, that's the number that the user entered, is equivalent to my prescribed passcode, which was at 850427. And I'm using the double equals here, so it is doing a comparison. The single equals is an assignment operator in which we're taking the right value and assigning it to the left. The double equals is a comparison. So it's comparing these two. It's going to come back either true or false, the Boolean expression. If it's true, if I punched in the right code, then I'm going to display the text unlocked in our feedback, and I'm going to go to and play frame 2 of our Vault movie clip. That will slide that door open and reveal the contents. Otherwise, in that feedback text box, I'm going to display the phrase no admittance, and I'm going to reset pass entry back to 0 so it's ready to be given a new punch code number. That's all there is to this. Let me just run it one more time. So again, if I put in some number, notice as I'm building this number, it's displaying down here. If I click submit, I get no admittance. If, however, I can give it the right number, the door opens and it says unlocked.